welcome. Sorry, I was a little bit caught off guard there. I was looking at all the questions. Welcome to the September Ask Me Anything, our monthly technical expert session. And you can ask anything. We try to theme them, otherwise we would just be quite random with our themes and with our questioning. But tonight we have a special guest whom I will introduce in a minute. We've got David on the back end at comms, so make sure, even though you don't see his face, make sure you say hello to him in the texts. And as always, if we don't get around to answering all of the questions, we will go back in and answer the comments at a later stage. So firstly, I would like to introduce the amazing technical expert hailing from España. It's Tito. Hey, Tito.
Hey, Claire. How are you?
How are you?
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad.
Lovely to see you. I'm assuming Delta Bird Fair was amazing. We'll talk about that later, but I bet it was amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing. We enjoyed a lot of the fair last weekend with the flamingos and many birds, many species. Yeah.
One day you will come to the UK Bird Fair, and one day I will come to Delta.
It's one of my dreams.
Okay, so our other amazing technical expert hails from Czech. It is the amazing, awesome Tomas. How you doing, hun?
Hi, Claire. Hi, Tito. Hi, everyone. All good so far, so good. I mean, as always here in Czech Republic. Unfortunately, we had this very, very bad floods last week, if you have noticed. But yeah, I mean, we have survived and everything goes on.
You escaped them okay. I mean, it's so worrying, isn't it? When you guys, you just don't think about floods in places like Poland and Czech, and yet it's been awful, hasn't it, for you guys?
It has. I mean, not for my region, but yeah, for the north part of the Czech Republic, it was quite disastrous. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're glad you are here and glad you are safe with us. Tonight, we have an amazing special guest for you. This wonderful O ambassador has been with us quite a few years now. She is awesome, runs workshops all over the world and has amazing adventures and takes amazing pictures. Tonight, we thought because of the subject matter, we would invite our wonderful OM ambassador, Tesni Ward. Hey, Tes.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm great. Apart from the weather, I'm great.
It's nice that you're home. You home for a while? Have you got sort of trips coming up? What's the plan?
So usually September's a bit quieter for me, which is always a welcome relief after spring and summer. I am off to Madagascar in November with David Tippling, who's another amazing ambassador with OMSYSTEM. I can't wait for that.
Have you been
You're a
before?
little bit jealous. No, we both we just really wanted to go, and we thought, well, why don't we just go together? So
great.
Going to be an amazing trip.
I mean, I was jealous about Shetland, and now I'm even more jealous about Madagascar. So tonight's session is wildlife photography, and we were going to talk a little bit about, fieldcraft, what's available this time of year to photograph, a good time, to get your kit serviced and cleaned and, do your homework, ready for the migration season and ready for all the beautiful things that come out in the autumn, apart from the fungi and the leaves and all the flora, we thought we would talk about animals. And so that's the subject. It's autumn. We're coming into autumn in the winter period. What questions have you got about wildlife? It can be anything. It can be about focus. It could be about low light. It could be about anything. So I'm going to jump straight into the questions and let's have a look, see what we've got. We don't tend to do too many hellos on the Ask Me Anythings because there's always lots and lots of chat. So let's start, shall we, and see where we can get in. And I'm going to show top of the tree, Ian. Hi. I already have the 75-300 as an ultralight carry when not really focusing on wildlife, but I'm thinking of getting the 40-150 2.8 Pro and a 2x converter. My favorite kit. If you really want to travel light, and it's not for long away stuff, this is such a beautiful combination. I think the 40-150 2.8 and the 2x is, to me, like the best match that we have. If you put that 2x on something, it's just I call it my SCOMA lens, because it can do birds in flight, it can do beautiful portrait, it can do stuff in context. Tesni, do you tend to get out with the 40 to 150 much, or are you a longer lens lady?
I genuinely love the 40-150 2.8. It is such a nifty mid-range lens, and it works so well with both of the teleconverters. So if I'm fully set up, I'll have the 150-400 on my main camera. There it is. And then I'll have the 40 to 150 on my second shooter, because it means I'm covering every range. I don't have mine with me presently, sadly, so I can't get mine.
No, mine's downstairs because I'm upstairs. My bag is always downstairs. So guys, well done. Always at hand, the 40 to 150. I mean, I know we repeat ourselves a lot about the 40 to 150, but it always gets so much love. At the weekend, you know, I was doing a show at one of our dealers, and you know, everybody loves and talks about that lens. So Ian, 100% you should get that lens. It is the absolute bomb. Okay, we're going to go straight into Julia's question. Over to you, Tito, to start. Any tips for encouraging the bird detection to work better when the bird isn't contrasting well with its surroundings? Oh, Tito, you love a bird photographer.
That's a challenging question, because we can control the subject detection, and we can also control how many subjects we want to focus. But when we talk about contrast, we also can work, and we can control and monitor the sensitivity of the AF. So depending on the motion, depending on the subjects, how they move, we can increase or decrease the sensitivity. But it's really amazing how our subject detection works, because in the past, before we had the subject detection, birds, planes, mammals, all of those subjects, when we used the CAF plus tracking, it was great, it was good. But now the AI, I always have my mix in mind, but AI, it's good enough, and the birds or the mammals or the dogs and cats are well done, even in the very, very dark conditions. I will say, I don't know how encouraged to work better with the low contrast images, because if we talk about the OM1 Mark II, also we have to take into account that 1,050 something areas, AF areas and pixels are also working with a quad pixel AF. So that means that we have gross, we have 100% of the area, and also we have gross AF areas in all of them. So I think it's good enough. I don't know if you agree, but
Tesni, what about you? What's your when you have this sort of issue, because obviously you do have that problem sometimes where the bird and the background just are really like, whoa, you know, do you find that the camera is working well picking it up?
I do find that it's usually pretty good, but sometimes if you have a combination of really bad conditions, it's challenging for any camera, not just the OM system. Right. So one of the things that I will often do, if my subject is so close to the background that I can't separate it, there's an argument that there's not a photo there, because if you don't have that separation, you lose your subject.
Right. Okay.
If there's enough separation from the background, I use the AF limiter, the inbuilt in-camera AF limiter. And I'll basically try and, you can either use pre-MF to figure out the exact distance, or I just estimate the distance, and I'll basically tell the camera, don't focus 5 to 10 meters before the background. And you'll find, because the camera's looking in a shorter focal range, the focus will be faster, it'll be more accurate, and it's significantly less likely to hit the background because it can't.
Yeah.
So,
do you know, it's really
if
funny.
you ever...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We were talking about this the other day, about how people still don't quite get what focus limiter is, but you're absolutely right. It can just look in the distance that you set and make it more accurate and make it more sort of, you know, yeah. Tomas?
Yeah, I was just about to say that we can always go, let's say, backwards in time, because obviously our cameras have this AI detection. But if the conditions are really, really bad, and you can hardly see it with your eyes, then obviously the camera can hardly see it as well. So we can always go back to, let's say, choosing one focusing point, point it at the animal, whatever it is, and that's it basically. So this is it will not find automatically the bird or any other animal, but you will just take one focusing point and point it directly at the animal, and that would work.
So what you're saying is when the AI isn't quite what it's needed, go back old school, use your 9-point, single point, whatever, and pick it up that way in that respect.
Absolutely.
Lots of options. Lots of options, guys. Thank you very much. We're going to speed through some questions because we've got lots of people up and there's lots of questions coming in. From Malcolm, I do like, this is a really interesting question because is it better to have a larger subject in the frame or more light? I mean, you want both, right? But for me, that's an interesting question because it's about composition as well, isn't it? You know, if your animal subject is small, it could be that you're looking for that composition image, that image that it gives the bird context, or we talk birds, but in context. So a difficult one almost. That's like sort of saying, do you like Marmite or not like Marmite? It's that will depend on your subject. Tesni, over to you. What do you think?
Well, I hate Marmite, so disgusting.
I can take it or leave it. That's the thing.
No. It is a very difficult question because it depends on several things. So when we say, is it better to have a larger subject in the frame or more light? Are we talking about focusing? Are we talking about compositionally? Does it make a better image? If we're talking about focusing, arguably a larger subject is easier. But then if you've got more light, there can be more contrast. The camera can pick up on that. When it comes to composition, the world's your oyster. You can have it big in the frame, small in the frame. I would argue that especially when people are starting wildlife photography, you just have this irresistible urge to fill the frame. I must fill the frame. Everybody does it. I did it. I still do it. Yeah, we've all been there. But as you kind of evolve your approach, you'll find that actually having smaller in the frame can make a much more impactful image. You've got a lot more context to the surroundings. So difficult question. The world's your oyster, and there's a million different answers for it.
Yeah, exactly that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have clear. I have no clear, very clear, because Malcolm is asking, is better to have a larger subject or more light, depending on your purpose. Because are we talking about focusing? Are we talking about metering, light metering? Better for what?
But absolutely, Malcolm. It is always about context. As I said, when I first started, again, I was like full on bird right down the middle, no context. Oh gosh, and now I love just seeing a much smaller subject in its bigger surroundings. But then that's my flavor. Okay, we're going to jump.
Maybe I can just show. Sorry, Claire. Maybe I can just show very briefly 2 images which have, let's say, quite big subject in the whole, let's say, area. But they are totally different. This is like a portrait type of a squirrel. But then you have this image where the size of the subject is roughly the same, but you have the much wider surroundings. So Malcolm, it's very much about really what you want, what type of composition you want, and then you can get as many light as you want to, obviously depending on the lighting conditions in the surroundings. But these are like 2 totally different images of one and the same subject, simply.
I don't know which one's my favorite. I like them both because you like them for different things. I love the wide angle, low down shot, but also the out of focus background. Like you say, it really, that's so cute as well, isn't it? Oh, love it.
So these are not my shots, right? These are shots by Peter Bombosic, our ambassador. So
sure. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Malcolm, you've opened up the discussion and we've discussed it. We hope that helps. This is a question specifically for Tesni. Tesni, what's your favourite location in Shetland? Guys, if you don't know where Shetland is what is it? 10 islands, or there's lots of little ones, but it's 3 main big ones, and they are settled very, very north of Scotland. They're a very famous place to come to holiday and to photograph. It takes from England to get there about 20 hours and you have to take a long boat or a plane, but it is a place for whales, and the wildlife there is incredible. One of our OMSYSTEM ambassadors lives there, and it is an incredible place. But Tesni, I've never been still. So where's your favorite place to go, do you think?
My favorite place is Hermanus. Hermanus is just so stunning. The first time you go there with the cliffs and the coastal birds, and you can see dolphins and whales and all sorts in the sea. It is stunning, beautiful, amazing. I could spend far too long up there. Or Victoria's tea shop. It's one of the best places you can go because you can just sit there. Best scones or scones in the UK, as far as I'm concerned. Great cup of tea, and you can sit outside the cafe and watch otters just swim by. So it's a wonderful location if you want a bit of downtime, but like still to get some photography.
That sounds like my kind of wildlife photography, eating jam and scones and cream whilst looking at otters. What an amazing thing. So guys, one day I will invite you to the Shetland Islands, right? Tito, Tomas, we will go to the Shetlands one day. It's on my list. We just need to sweeten up management a little bit. But let's
I'm taking notes. Shetland and Rutland. We have 2 locations, 2 destinations already.
One day I'm buying my flight already.
Okay, Tomas, I'm going to throw this over to you. Ted Smith says, can I use Pro Capture along with back button
function focusing? No, you cannot, because Pro Capture actually needs to have, let's say, the half press functionality of the button, which the regular trigger, which you have here on your front finger, you can half press it first and then fully press it, which is something you cannot do with any other button on the camera, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you can still have back button focus activated, right?
Yes. But still the half pressing actually is what activates the Pro Capture functionality.
Yeah. Exactly. And what we're saying, Ted, is you can use back button, but the back button doesn't activate the Pro Capture. The front shutter button activates the Pro Capture. So you can use both, but you can only use the front one for the firing or the setting off of the Pro Capture.
I'll just say I'm a back button focuser, but it's so easy if you're using Pro Capture with back button to forget to start recording with that half press. So even though I'm a back button focuser, I intentionally revert to front button with Pro Capture to avoid that mistake.
To avoid thinking, why is nothing happening?
Why is nothing recording? I don't understand. Where's my pre-images? So I always flip to front.
Yeah, see, I don't use back button focus, so I've never had that issue, but very interesting to know that. Thomas,
I have some trick or some hint for this, because you know, we have the custom settings and wildlife, and there are so many ways of shooting wildlife, because you can make a portrait, you can make a fast action, you can need Pro Capture or not. So, but you can save the custom settings, C1, C2, C3, and C4. But also you can have more than 4 if you save them on your mobile phone through the applications, through the OM image share. So that means that you can have a setting for wildlife, for portrait and quiet shooting, also for action, and also a third one for Pro Capture, where in the third one with the Pro Capture, you do not use the AF on back button, and you use only the press release button with the 2 actions, half press and full press, to activate the Pro Capture and also shoot. And you will never forget that. So C1, C2, and C3 for Pro Capture. That's a tip.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. A really good question, Tomas. I'm gonna because you've probably got a camera attached, right? Let's talk about stopping down. Nothing to do with wildlife, but we're there. The question's there, so let's get on with it. So Edward has asked, can you explain stopping down? And in a comment that David made on an earlier class, if you shoot in aperture priority, the camera will tell you. So stopping down is a little button on the front of the camera that allows you to see how out of focus your backgrounds will be, right? So if you are shooting f/22, your backgrounds are less likely to be out of focus. If you're shooting 1.8, your backgrounds are more likely to be out of focus. And so this stopping down, there's 2 buttons on the front of the camera. You can, have you got that, Tomas? Tomas has got Pro Capture on.
I do, but I just need to turn off the This one here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Again.
All right. It's absolutely fine. There you go.
It should be this button. You can see the tiny little green thing down there. Well, it won't probably be very much visible on this wooden board or whatever it is in front of me. But as I'm stopping down to F22 now, you can actually see how the whole picture went much darker than if I'm opening it up. And the same thing. Let me just put something in front of the camera.
I was going to say, hey, there we go. There we go. Hey, always get the, there you go. So, Edward, can you see that basically, as Tomas is ranging through the apertures, when you have a nice wide aperture like 2.8, the background is out of focus. And as Tomas flicks through the apertures, he's now at f22. Although it's darker, can you see how much sharper the board is at the back? And that is how to check to shoot before. Let me just go back a second. Back in the day when we shot film, stopping down allowed you not to waste any frames, all right? Because stopping down meant that if you only had 24 or 36 rolls, or even larger format had a small amount of frames on your film, you didn't waste frames. You got the shot you wanted. With digital, it's a little bit easy because you can take the shot and go, oh, hang on a minute, that's not quite what I wanted. And you can quickly go back and then change your aperture. So stopping down, you know, back in the film days was like, oh, really, really important to waste film. And as I said, now it's not so bad because if you've shot at the wrong aperture, you can bring it back. But perfect, Tomas, that demonstration was exactly what we needed. Nice and easy, nice and simple.
Not an animal, but you know, it's tiny and it fits on my table quite nicely.
A Danish brick man will do.
Claire, can I add one more tip?
Yes.
To confirm the depth of field, because
yes,
with the stop down button, you see the depth of field, and you can also see the light, etc. For macro, or everybody knows that we have some manual focus assistants like focus picking and the magnifier, blah blah blah. If we assign the stepping down this to the button, and also we assign the focus picking to another button, because same thing, when you are checking the depth of field, most of the time you don't have enough information. It's not very visible, that depth of field. If you activate the focus picking, you will see larger depth of field painted on red or yellow or black. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's really, really helpful when you are working on macro photography, because the depth of it is so narrow that when you activate the focus picking, you will see in red or green or yellow or black or white, depending on the background, you will see exactly the size of the depth of field painted on color.
Yeah, good stuff. Awesome. So we've got a quick question for Tesni. Terry. Hey, Terry. I'm loving your Dark Side of the Moon thingy cover there. Do you change the autofocus sensitivity on the fly when you're in the field, and if you do, how? Or are you sort of, what's the plan?
So currently there's no way of doing it with buttons. You do have to go into the menu. So I always use my menu, and the way that I organize my menu is things that my menu is you put the things of most importance, or the things that you need to get to quickly, in the first tab. So I have CAF sensitivity at the top of my menu 1. Another thing that I do, so typically if I'm shooting anything general wildlife, I'm shooting at a sensitivity of 0. So not increased, not decreased. I have my bird in flight mode assigned to my AEL button. So it's C1, bird in flight, and I just press AEL and it jumps it on. Nice. When I'm doing birds in flight, I want my sensitivity to be +2. I have found that having a higher sensitivity, a higher reactivity on the focus gets you more images. So the moment I go on to C1, my CAF sensitivity is automatically on +2. So that's the easiest way I've found of doing a very quick change of the sensitivity if needed.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that? Because like you say, you would think if you were sort of set in a certain position, you're going to know the sensitivity. But actually, if there's no action and all of a sudden you're photographing something else, then you don't necessarily need that sensitivity. So sensitive, right? So I hope that answers your question, Terry. Anybody else got anything to add to CAF sensitivity, or should we steam into the next questions? There's a good one here.
Also, sorry, Claire. I was just going to say,
far away.
It can also be done that basically you prepare the same setting for the same setup on C1, for example, and then basically exactly the same setting, only with the change of the sensitivity to C2, right? But then you would basically cover most of your C settings, which you want to have probably for some other genres, some other topics. So it could be technically done, but depends on really how much C buttons and function buttons you want to cover by simply this tiny change.
Yeah, exactly that. Good on you. Okay, so we're halfway through. Now we're going to do something new tonight for the audience. We are going to put a little survey, a little poll. It's not a survey, it's a poll. David is going to drop that little link in now. And if you could go in and answer that little question, it's one question, it's nice and simple. And the idea of putting the polls in is to start getting feedback and start knowing our audience. What do you guys want? What do we start, what are we looking for in the Ask Me Anything sessions? What are we looking for in the Zooms? All that type of thing. So to know our audience enables us to bring better content. So today is a very, very simple poll. And David put it in. I'll give you a little reminder in a little bit of time. But if you could pop that answer in there and we will have a word. So David, over to you. And when you can, just pop in and answer it. I've got a really lovely little comment here from Munir. It says, thanks for the new 150 to 600 mega lens. I'm amazed at the quality of it. Don't like the weight, but you can't defeat the laws of physics. And it's improved my wildlife photography so much. I mean, it is weightier than some other lenses, but it's also the longest lens we've ever done, and for the price, we can it sits between the 100-400 and it sits between the 150 to 400, and it is super, super sharp. Image quality is amazing. Obviously there's always going to be a tiny bit of meeting halfway, but if you can take that little bit of extra weight, it means you get super, super sharp images for a third of the price of the white lens. So anybody else, Tesni, if you've been using the 150 to 600?
No, I have used it. I was saying before it came out, why would I use it? Because I've got the 150-400. But then I used it and I was actually really pleasantly surprised. The image quality was pretty spectacular, to be honest. And like Munir has mentioned, the weight, yes, it's a little bit of a compromise, but if you're doing safari, if you're in a hide, if you have a tripod, it's so, so, so good. I ate my own words, basically.
Tomas, you've got it there. Look at you.
I was just about to say that it's actually not that bad as for the weight. It's something around maybe 200 grams more weight on 150 to 600 than on the white one on 150-400. But obviously it is slightly, I don't know if you can see it, it is slightly shorter. Obviously the lens goes out. Then once you start using it, actually, then the lens is even longer than 150 to 400. But in the transportation, let's say shape and size, it's quite small. It's not a huge lens. So if you want to use one of these two and have enough money, obviously you buy the white one, that's for sure. But this is roughly one third of the price of the 150 to 400. So basically, I mean the price range compared to what it can do, what type of pictures it actually brings you, I would definitely go for 150 to 600. Probably because of my price range, but yes, I mean this is an amazing lens.
And listen, we all love the white lens, but the white lens is 7,000 euros, pounds, dollars, whatever. The 150 to 600, you could buy that and then have a really amazing photo trip for the price of the white lens, right? Anyway, Anyway, this is another question for Tesni. Hope you don't mind, darling. Well, that's why you're here, to answer all these questions. Tesni, Jan says, do you do any upscaling or sharpening in post-processing on your subject?
So I rarely upscale. My approach is usually to try and minimize cropping. So it's incredibly rare where I would need to upscale. And I do prints A2, A1 sometimes, and I don't find that I need to do that to still get really good results. In terms of sharpening, it's incredibly rare that I will standalone sharpen. It's rare that I need to be honest. I find that the sharpness on the lenses is good enough. But I do sometimes use Topaz denoise, and within that, it has a sharpening tool. So it's very easy to push that slider too far, and I'm very cautious with it. But even a subtle change, it does enhance the image. So I apply a small amount if I am removing noise.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to be so careful when you use any post software because, you know, you think, oh, that looks nice, but actually it's so like, oh, over the top. Tito, do you use Topaz denoise as well? Or do you do reduction in Photoshop? What's your...
Yeah, I've used all of them because I'm changing continuously from one to another one. And in the past, until 2-3 years ago, I was using Capture One, but Camera Raw, Lightroom improved dramatically the noise reduction and the sharpening and all of those things. But I love Topaz. I love Topaz. Now I'm using Topaz and also the XO Pure Raw.
Okay. And what about you, Tomas? What are you on now? What software?
Yeah.
I mean, Topaz is great. Workspace, but there
Topaz is amazing. Right? Yeah. On the other hand, I have to say that the latest version of Photoshop with the AI, which they built in, is, to me, it's just about the same amazing sharpening software. I mean, it has changed so much, you know. So yeah, I mean, I've been with Photoshop for ages, and I'm still sticking to it.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So they've upped their game on the noise reduction side, have they?
Yes, totally.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. And again, it's always going to be down to personal preference and budget and so on, right? There's always that to consider. Okay, next question comes from Joe Jones. I recently bought a 100-400 lens, which I love for wildlife, but I'm getting too many soft or slightly blurred images. Any suggestions? Tomas, over to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I would have a suggestion. Obviously, as we all know, 100-400 does not have a sync IS. So it's not synchronized stabilization. It does have built-in stabilization system, I mean, optical one. There's stabilization in the camera as well, but it's not synced like it is with 150-600, 300 millimeter, or the white 150-400. So with this one, even my personal experience, I strongly recommend that you, maybe it sounds very strange suggestion, but make yourself a tripod. Right. So if you are using 100-400 and you have something, a rail or whatever, to lean on, you know, simply, or lean your arm against a wall or against a tree, against something, make yourself a tripod. Simply be more stabilized, because there definitely is a difference between stabilization 100-400 and the other lenses I have just mentioned. So it might be the cause. I don't know if it's really the cause, but it might be. And I face this personally as well. So I started to, let's say, lean myself against things, and it worked quite well.
Yeah. Tito, have you got any experience with the shooting with the 100-400, or are you only using the white lens now?
Of course, because we have access to all of them. Well, obviously, I use the 150-400 more than the rest. But no, I use all of them. In the 100-400, I think it's a great lens, but obviously is limited if we compare it with the 150-600 and the 150-400. And I will also talk about another tip regarding the stabilization, because 150-600 and 150-400 are sync IS compatible, but 114 is not. If we are working with the short long focal lengths, both body and lens work well together. And I have experienced that when I go to the end from 250 to 300 mils to 400, I get better results with the stabilization just in the lens. when the people talk about blur images or all of those things, and also when we are shooting with the long lenses, it's because our subjects are too far. And I've seen people who is taking pictures to the subjects which are 300, 400, 500 meters, and they expect to have great portraits from them, and that's not the job. So 100 to 400 mils is a great lens, and the stabilization is key to get better images. We need to decide when we should use the body plus lens,
Right.
only the body or only the lens. I think that's
and
good.
this is, you're absolutely right, Tito. Terry O'Brien has put in for the 100 to 400. He uses lens priority IS in the menu, in the camera menu, which I'm not sure I would do. I suppose it really does depend on the circumstances. Tesni, what about you? What's your feelings?
I usually advise with the 100 to 400 to turn the lens priority on, which is your shooting menu 1, sub-tab 8. From my experience with the 1 to 4, zoom all the way in and then bring it back just a titch. I find that it is just a little bit sharper if you bring it back from 400. And if you're shooting wide open, assuming that you haven't changed how much your dial changes your aperture, 1 click from wide open I find to be slightly sharper. So if you're shooting wide open at f4, you want to shoot at 4.5. And just as mentioned as well, sometimes there's the temptation, if a subject is very far away, to want to get that image. But it's important to consider how much atmosphere are you shooting through. The smaller the subject is in the frame, the less pixels it's taking up, the softer it will appear. If you're shooting through any kind of moisture, if there's a lot of humidity in the air, that will significantly impact the sharpness of your images. So it can be such a wide combination of things that can lead to images being slightly blurred or looking slightly soft. But if you try and do all of the steps to minimize the risk, then hopefully you're going to get a higher hit rate.
Yeah, good point, because you forget about things like atmosphere, sea spray, fog. I mean, there's so many things that can affect, and of course all the birds are in flight, so they are going to be affected by heat. All that sort of stuff is going to possibly put that out. So yeah, good tip, really good tip. Okay, I'm going to throw this over to you, Tito, because this lovely gentleman met you at the weekend. Hi, David from Barcelona. Last weekend, I had a great opportunity to check the OM1 Mark II with Tito. With birds, my question is, do you recommend always having a dissociated focusing? What's dissociated focusing?
Claire, dissociating is the AF on back button. AF.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, so...
that means to use the AF on the back button and also use the press button just for shooting, not for AF. AF back and the shutter release button just for releasing. Yeah.
And is that how you shoot then, Tito?
Yeah, I will say if you're not using the Pro Capture, if you don't need the Pro Capture, I recommend to use the AF on the back button for AF and the other one, the release button for shooting. Always, I disable the focus on the press release. Button. Yeah. Press release button, press release. I'm talking press release. Press release is not press release. That's release button. Forget press.
I love that. Right, now this question I'm going to put up. I'm going to give you the quickest answer in the world, Andrea. Any cheap ideas for vertical capture apart from buying the HLD10? Yep, there you go. How's that? I mean, that is the cheapest way. I'm being cheeky. I'm being a bit facetious. I apologize. But Tomas, that's it, right? It's HLD10 or turn the camera around.
Yeah, I mean, there is like no real alternative to HLD10. And it is a great solution, which you have just said. Just don't use it. On the other hand, when you have these two lenses, or one of these two lenses, 15600, 15400, I strongly recommend using HLD10 because it just holds better. You know, the grip is much more sturdier, and it feels better in your hands. So I would probably go for it if you are using telephoto lenses, the big ones.
Yeah, you get the extra battery. Tesni, do you use the grip? No.
No.
I am waiting for you guys to bring out an OMX because I love that camera so much. I really appreciate the benefits of a battery grip, but I don't like a battery grip myself. I would rather it be one unit. So I awkwardly, I'll spin the lens on the tripod foot and I shoot like that. Or very occasionally, if I'm in a really awkward position, I shoot like that, but that one's really awkward.
Yeah,
I don't really understand.
Go on.
Sorry, Claire. I don't really understand what this Andrea Toniani mean with a cheap idea for vertical capture without using the ads, because if you don't have the grip, you need to have this. You don't have the grip.
Right.
You don't have controls, buttons, and dials
with the grip.
Yeah, but as Tomas said, with the big ones, with the you can move the tripod mount, you can release, and you can change. If you have a monopod or whatever, you can rotate the lens and the camera with it, but you don't have vertical controls unless you use a grip.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't promote a third-party brand. Why would we? You know, but it is that thing with like the EM1X. Obviously, even though that camera was the biggest camera we ever produced, the even sort of weight was just lovely, and like you said, the battery grip was really nice within that, the battery thing. But yeah, I do tend to put my HLD10 on when I'm using it for periods of time, because I get the extra battery, but also like you say, I have arthritis in both hands, and it just allows the weight not to push on my sort of thumb here for a while. So I do tend to use it. But at the moment, Andrea, I don't know about any third parties. We wouldn't like to comment just in case. So yeah, the cheapest way, tip the camera up. That is the cheapest way. Okay, keep your questions coming in. Keep the poll answered if you found where the poll is. I mean, I can't see it from this back end, but I'm assuming it's just either in the questions or in the somewhere. But if David is in the questions, if you've got any, if you want to know where it is, I'm sure he'll tell you. Stephen Robson says, I have an EM10 Mark III with a 12-40 2.8 Pro. How many stops will I lose with a 2x converter? And will there be a somewhere near decent wildlife kit? Okay, firstly, the 2x converter doesn't go on the 12-40. If that's the only lens you've got, you can't put it on that lens. It only goes on. Right, let's list the lenses that the converters go on. 40-150 2.8. Tito, next. What's yours? 100-400.
300.
300. Thomas?
In general, all pro telelenses accepted, plus 90mm macro lens, the new one.
Yeah.
So that's just sorry, except for 4150 f40.
Right.
Because this is like the tiny, smaller version of 4150 2.8, which is compatible with the MC20 or MC14. But the cheaper version with Aperture 4.0 is not compatible with that. But otherwise, all pro lenses, telelenses are compatible with it.
Yeah. So for sure, our 2x converter, if you do put it on, say, for instance, a 40-150 2.8, you will lose 2 stops of light. If you put the 1.4 on, you'll lose 1.5 stops of light. That's generally how teleconverters work. And will there be a somewhere need? Nah, right. Okay. So what you're asking is if you put the 12-40 with the 2x, will it be a decent wildlife kit? Well, apart from the fact it doesn't fit, no. But also you would only, with a 2x converter, be getting 160mm in 35mm terms. So the answer again is not quite enough. We normally say, and this is not a rule, that 300mm is sort of where a wildlife lens starts in focal length. Would you agree with that, Tesni?
Yeah, I mean, I do sometimes use the 12-40 for wildlife, but it's very specific wildlife and it has to be very close. Otherwise, if you're working with, I don't like to use the term easy wildlife, but if you're at a country park working with waterfowl, a 40 to 150 will be plenty. But if you're starting to do more of the in the field, some of the slightly less friendly wildlife, 300 is your shorter range. You want to be moving up from that if possible.
So before we ask any more questions, I would like to ask some questions of Tesni, because obviously we are coming into autumn. We are talking about wildlife. So in the UK, what's there to photograph? What's the sort of subject of the month or the next coming months? Where should our people start pointing their lenses?
Make the most of the autumnal colours, and that can be done with a lot of different species. The main thing that people always associate with October is the deer rut, and the deer rut is just fabulous. So obviously you can have. You going Richmond or Bushy?
I am going Bushy Park.
You can have fun.
Love it.
Don't get skewered. No, so the deer rut's absolutely fabulous. That's usually the middle-ish of October. It does move depending on the weather and temperature. I love just working with common species in autumn, just getting those colours. So even if it's grey squirrels, pigeons, waterfowl, just make the most of that colour. It is a little bit of a transitional period for certain mammals, especially in the UK. I really love doing red grouse in the autumn because the heather turns vibrant, rustic red. And when you've got a grouse against that, it is absolutely stunning. But a lot of things like water voles, badgers, foxes, they're starting to become a lot harder to work with. So in the next 3 or so months, mountain hares, they'll be coming up. But until they start to change colour, just anything I can get in those wonderful autumnal colours, I'm after it.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. What about you, Tomas? What will you be looking out for at the moment as far as sort of, in your area? Is there a specific animal that comes out? Do you go looking for deer? What's the plan in Czech?
I mean, in our area, we have always been discussing this and nobody believes us, in Czech Republic, for whatever reason. Well, we know the reason probably, but the animals are so extremely shy that it's probably nowhere else in the world. I mean, mammoths, right? Birds are kind of okay, so you can see them everywhere in the forest, in the park, in the garden, everywhere. So it's easier to take nice pictures of birds, and obviously squirrels and these kind of, let's say, city park, tiny animals. That's easy to take pictures of. But if you want to take a picture of a deer, for example, then you really need to spend not hours, but you need to spend days, couple of days to actually get the proper nice picture. Which means actually going out to the forest, maybe even building up this kind of hide or tent, special tent, knowing actually where they appear, waiting for them, spending the whole day there, being there even before the what is it, not dawn, but in the morning, so early in the morning, waking up so that they can come to feed on the grass. I mean, it's very difficult. Obviously, our pro photographers are like Rostislav Stak, our ambassador. He goes to the forest from like maybe early 4-5 a.m. in the morning, and he stays there until late in the evening. And he spends in the forest maybe 1.5 months. Obviously, at night he goes back home, right? But when it's the deer season, which actually starts now, it's now October. September, October. It's the deer season here in Czech Republic. Then basically he spends 1.5 months in the forest, and then he returns with amazing images and videos, obviously, as well. But it is about timing. I mean, the wildlife in general is about spending time in the nature. Tesni, you would probably tell us, how much time you spend on an amazing picture, right? It's not just like going out to the forest, seeing an animal, taking a picture. Oh, I got it. This is my winning picture. I'm going to send it to all competitions. It takes time, right?
No. Time, patience, good clothing, lots of like sleeping in the car, or early starts, lots of early morning starts. We're very lucky that we have a lot of public parks here in the UK that actually have a lot of deer. And although they are wild, they are aware of people. So, you know, you can be within a certain distance from them and they know you're there. Obviously, you don't approach them, but you know, they're fully aware of people. So we are very lucky that we get quite a few places up and down the UK to go for the deer up. Really exciting, a very small window, but the noise is just the most incredible noise when they butt antlers. You know, the echo through the parks is just incredible, you know, and then the noise and stuff. So that's a good thing to look out for. Tito, what about you? Have you got anything specific that you're going to look out, photograph for coming up in the next month, apart from
yeah, same as Tesni. The deer rod is really very popular here in Spain, mostly in the south of the country, and also during this period, some mammals and also amphibians and reptiles. We are talking about wildlife, and we are talking about mammals and that blah blah blah. But amphibians and reptiles and bears are also preparing for the winter, and they increase the activity right now. So it's a good season, and also the birds migration. This is the second lap in the birds migration, and in Spain we have a very this is a great area in the way of the it's in the path of the birds migration. So we are also really lucky. Yes. And as Thomas said, the wildlife here in Spain is also very shy. So we have to hide every time. We have to hide for whatever you want to shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like the Yellowstone National Park, right? In the US, I mean, they just walk all around you, and you just take pictures like tourists.
I know, it's crazy, right? I mean, the thing is about the you know, we are coming into that very exciting time of having to use your brains a bit more, because lighting changes so drastically when we go into sort of autumn and winter. You don't have the luxury of those really sort of contrasty skies, but actually I find those much more atmospheric shooting into autumn and winter. I find the colors are brighter because the earth tends to be darker, and you know, you don't get those really glaring contrasty lights. Do you think so, Tess? Is that your favorite time of the year to shoot?
Autumn and spring can be brilliant because, especially in the early morning, you get that mist rising, you get those really atmospheric frosty. I love a frosty morning. I hate getting up early in the morning. I've tried for years to become a morning person. It's still just not happening. But when you get out and your breath is out and it's frosty and it's just sharp and it's beautiful, you wake up quickly. You kind of don't have an option. So getting those kind of conditions, in my opinion, they're a lot more dramatic and impactful for photography compared to summertime.
Even mystic atmosphere.
Beautiful for landscape and wildlife. For anything, you know, obviously our ethos that runs through all of the things we do at OMSYSTEM is all about being in nature in whatever way you can. You know, get out. We're coming into fungi season, you know, literally that's just about starting to kick off. So although we don't like the rain, actually the rain is amazing for damp conditions to bring out the amazing fungi. So if it has rained, you can go out the next day and you get some good photography there. Okay, we've got a few more questions I'm going to dive back into, because did you know we've nearly been talking an hour already? Time flies when you've been having fun. I'm going to throw this over to Tito with Pro Capture. Is it better to use CAF or SAF?
Okay, sure. It depends on what you're looking for, because we have, you know, two types of Pro Capture. As we have two types of sequential shooting, SH1 or SH2 in the case of OM1, or HL, high or low, in the case of the previous models. And when you are using Pro Capture, it depends on your subject will move backward, forward on the focal plane. You will need to shoot CAF, SH2. In the case, and also SH2, you will be able to shoot up to 50 frames per second, not with all of the lenses, only with the Pro lenses. With the rest of the lenses, the maximum shooting, sequential shooting, is 25 frames per second. But if your subject you're expecting to move, you're waiting for the action, and you expect your subject will move in from side to side. It will not move from front to forward to backward. SAF will be enough. I will say SAF, CAF is not different from ProCapture from to the rest of the sequential shooting modes.
Wonderful, thank you, darling. I'm going to jump.
Yeah, maybe I can show.
Yes.
Sorry, maybe I can show two sample images of this.
Yeah.
Because this is, for example, an image where there's a bird. Sorry, I don't know the English name of it,
Starling.
but it's just what is it? Starling?
It's called a starling. Yeah.
Oh, starling. Okay, so this starling has a nest in the trunk of a tree. So basically, it is a fixed distance between this tree where he's going to land and between the camera. So here you can very simply use SAF. You don't need to use continuous autofocusing because the distance does not change. But for example, if you would be shooting images like this, where the hummingbird, sorry, when the hummingbird actually is moving around, so it will obviously go to the flower to feed on it, but it can move around like in a circle, you know, so the distance will change. So in this type of case of photography, I would definitely go for CAF with the ProCapture. Yeah, so
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the perfect thing. I tend to say that one CAF, that one SAF. You know, depending on your focal plane. So if your animal bird's doing this one, CAF. If it's doing this, more likely to be SAF. Okay, Thomas, we have a question for you, my lovely, from Edward Sheftel. Thomas, do you use Lightroom AI noise reduction on what percentage of your wildlife photos, or just the low light photos?
Yeah, well, I don't use Lightroom, I use Photoshop, but from what I hear is that basically the software, the algorithm should be just about the same. And I use it maximum to like 15 to 20%. I don't go over an edge, you know. So just slightly sharpen the images, and that's just about it. And I'm not using it only for low light. It very much depends on the type of picture, you know, where I want to make it sharper. Even if it's let's say highlight, nicely lit image, then I still maybe want to have a little bit more, let's say, a star in the eye, you know. So I make it a little bit more sharper, but not very much. Really, like up to 15%, very tiny sharpening.
Okay. Right, yeah, that's a good thing to know. So one of the question's gone, it's disappeared. But one of our customers asked Tesni, when you've got the LN function button, do you use it? The lens function button that you'll find on all pro lenses. If you've got the big white, do you have it functioned? I bet you have it functioned to focus limiter. No, don't. Oh, you do.
No, it is. Yeah.
I win, and I win one Mark II and a big white lens.
Because you don't have one already. So I use it for that, and because I use sort of like a wooden holder on my 154, so it sits nicely in your hand. My thumb naturally sits right next to that LFN button. You have 4 essentially, so if you're rotating it, there's always one near your thumb. So I use it for the AF limiter, 1 press on, 1 press off. And because you can do 3 different presets, if you hold it down and twiddle a dial, you can rotate between your 3 presets. So you can be prepared for all eventualities, essentially.
Nice. Yeah, you guys, I know we do bang on about this AF limiter, but you really need to get your heads around it because it is a game changer. You know, it can massively speed up. Instead of the lens having to focus through all of its glass, it just jumps to those 2 focus distances. And so it can, if you can get your head around it, it does make a huge difference. Couple of more questions because we're nearly at time. Ron, I'm not going to pronounce your surname. Apologize. Do you step down the aperture when photographing birds in flight, for instance, to 7.1 to improve the change all of the birds is in focus? Especially bigger birds. Yeah. Tell me your sort of aperture range, Tesni. What do you do there? Birds in flight.
It's partially to do with my bird, and it's partially to do with the background. So sometimes if your background is quite close to the subject, you've got to make a choice. Do you risk the focus missing slightly, but your background you've got separation from your background, or do you get the whole bird in, but the background's too distracting?
Right.
So if I'm working with a bird that's very erratic, a swallow, a swift, sometimes even a puffin. They fly very fast. I will usually try and have a slightly larger depth of field, so that even if the focus, for whatever reason, misses slightly, hits the wing rather than the face, I'm more likely to have the full subject in focus. But, sometimes the light's not good, so I have to shoot wide open. Sometimes if the background's too close, it's all about compromise. So if the conditions are optimal, yes, I will, rather than shooting at 4.5, I'll shoot 5.6, 6.3. But sometimes I do still just shoot wide open.
Because you do hear photographers going, yeah, I don't change it from f8 on everything. And I'm always like, really? People can get a little bit stuck in their ways, right, in that respect. Yeah.
I think the rule or the suggestion of shoot f8, from my perspective, comes from full frame shooting. We are not full frame. So shoot at f4. Shoot at f4. That's without getting into too much detail, it's as close to a full frame f8 in terms of your depth of field. So we don't need to stop down for optimal focus. But sometimes if you want a little bit more, if you're working with a swan, for example, very long from the head to the back. So sometimes you want more depth.
Right. Yeah. Good thinking. Okay. A couple of more questions. I'll answer this one. Bob, yes, the 90mm takes the 2 times and the 1.4 times. Bish, bosh. And then we're going to answer this one. This is from Jean. I'm going to say Jean Barrett. What frame rate do you recommend on OM1 Mark II for large mammals? I mean, my feeling is it depends whether they're static or moving, right? Because if you've got a static elephant, you can take a single shot, move around, change your sort of position. But of course, if you've got an elephant running at you, then you're going to not want to take one.
A cheetah is not the same than a hypo.
Imagine just getting, before you get eaten, you just get the one shot. How annoying. So it does vary. Tesni, what do you think?
I typically use the high modes for anything bird related.
Okay.
And then if I'm working with general subjects, I try and get my frame rate to a point where I can still just take 1 or 2 if I'm disciplined on the shutter button. But then if you've got a deer just standing there, hello, you don't want to take 50 images of the deer. But then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, because you've been so enthralled with this deer, another one flies past your shoulder, smashes straight into him. If you're on a single frame rate, you're going to panic, because who wouldn't panic? You're going to be fumbling around. You're going to miss so much potential. So I think it's good to have it at the highest frame rate where you feel like you can still just take 1 or 2. But when it all kicks off, spray and pray. Don't spray and pray, but you can spray if you need to.
Well, there's a lot to be said about high frame rates, and we will finish on this subject, all 4 of us. But one of the reasons with the OM1 Mark II is we brought in higher frame rates, because sometimes 50 and 120 is too many, right? You want those lower frame rates, so you still want continuous, but you don't want a card full. You know what you're doing. It's a deer. You're going to be ready, but you don't want to be 50 shots ready. And Tito, what about you? Do you think the same? It's sometimes better to drop the frame rates?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the 50, even 25 frames per second could be, you can need them in some cases, but with the OM1 Mark II, even we have the option to decrease to 12 and even less shots in the sequence, because depending on the motion, depending on the animal, depending on the species, as we said, it's not the same to track a squirrel than hypo. So it depends on the species.
And Tomas, what's your feeling on it?
No, I had just funny feeling when you first read this question. You mentioned an elephant, and this was exactly what appeared in my mind when I read large mammals.
Mammal.
And elephants. Yeah, exactly. Large mammal. To me, it's just an elephant, or a whale maybe. But anyhow, regarding, for example, the elephant, I would definitely go slow down to maybe 12 frames per second or even less, because you don't feel, even though the elephant was running, they are just not running that fast, While if it was, as Tito mentioned, a cheetah, for example, then you would easily go to 25, maybe 50 frames per second with continuous focusing, why not? Because you definitely want to have as many, let's say, options to choose from regarding the position of the legs, and so on when it's running on the grass. So I mean, depending on the speed of the subject, definitely.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so as a little wrap up, Tesni, have you got any workshops coming up? Well, you've got the Deer Up, but they're all sold out. But if you go to our events page, all of our events on there, and they are European wide. In fact, they're worldwide. We've also got a Zoom coming up on the 8th of October. Tomas, you've got a really good one coming up as well soon with Peter Bambusek, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, it's about wildlife photography, but this time it's like 10 tips to think outside of the box. So let's say be slightly different somehow. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, you want to take your photography to another level. I love that. David, as always, has his Tech Thursday, and the next Tech Thursday is Autumn Macro, which is absolutely apt. So again, Tech Thursday, and that's on the 10th of October. Amazing for that. If you have partaken in the poll, we really appreciate it. We see the numbers. We don't know who hasn't, but I can tell we want at least over 250 people partaking in that poll. No pressure. Thank you for that. As I said, we put these polls in, and they'll be coming for us to enable you for us to enable to deliver, better content. Find out what you want. So the poll is quite a simple question, but they will change as the seasons go on and as the Zooms and the lives go on. So please do that. It really does help. Your feedback helps. Thank you so much to David, who's been in the background for asking the questions, answering the questions. Thank you to Tito and to Tomas, as always. And a very big, special, massive thank you for Tesni for joining us. And we appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you soon. But for that, from me, it's good night. So good night, everybody. Take care.
Night.
Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.